Italy. Just the name itself carries weight. It arrives on your tongue like poetry, like a promise whispered across centuries. This is a land where the sun doesn't merely rise, it awakens something ancient. Where golden light spills across hillsides that have witnessed empires born and fallen. Where the sea meets cliffs in an eternal conversation between earth and water. Italy is not a country you simply visit. It's a country you feel. In the warmth of its stone pathways, in the echo of footsteps through corridors where emperors once walked, in the silence of a mountain dawn and the chaos of a city square at noon. Here, history isn't locked behind glass. It lives, it breathes. A woman hangs laundry on a balcony that overlooks a 2,000-year-old ruin. Children play soccer in piazzas designed by Renaissance masters. Fishermen mend their nets in harbors where ancient ships once departed for distant shores. This is Italy, a living museum, a masterpiece still being painted, and for the next hour, we'll journey through this country, from the peaks of its northern mountains to the volcanic islands of the south. From the marble cities that shaped Western civilization to the quiet villages where time moves slower, gentler. We'll explore landscapes that have inspired artists for millennia. We'll walk through cities where every corner tells a story. And we'll understand why this nation's culture, its food, its art, its very way of life, continues to captivate the world. Italy isn't just seen, it's experienced, it's remembered. It leaves echoes in your memory long after you've left its shores. This is Italy, and this is its story. Look at a map of Europe, and one shape immediately captures your imagination. A boot extending boldly into the Mediterranean Sea, as if stepping forward to meet the world. Italy measures roughly 116,000 square miles, but within those borders exists a geographic diversity that defies its modest size. In the north, the Alps form a dramatic barrier between Italy and the rest of Europe. These ancient peaks, some reaching over 15,000 feet, create a wall of rock and ice that has shaped Italian history for thousands of years. The Matterhorn, Monte Rosa, Mont Blanc, these are not merely mountains. They are sentinels, standing watch over valleys where Italian culture was forged in isolation and perseverance. Below the Alps, the land softens into the Po Valley, Italy's breadbasket. Here, the Po River winds through fertile plains that have fed Italian cities since before Rome was founded. This is Italy's agricultural heartland, where rice paddies and wheat fields stretch toward horizons that blur in summer heat. But Italy's spine is formed by another mountain range, the Apennines. These gentler peaks run the entire length of the peninsula, like a backbone holding the country together. They divide east from west, creating microclimates and regional identities that persist to this day. then, the seas. Italy is embraced by water on three sides. To the west, the Tyrrhenian Sea. To the east, the Adriatic. To the south, the Ionian. Each body of water brings its own character, its own story, its own influence on the coastal communities that have depended on these waters for survival and prosperity. The coastline stretches for over 4,700 miles. Cliffs plunge into turquoise waters. Sandy beaches give way to rocky coves. Ancient ports shelter modern fishing boats alongside yachts and ferries. And scattered throughout these seas islands, Sicily and Sardinia, the two largest, are worlds unto themselves. But there are hundreds more. The Aeolian Islands, Elba, Capri, each one a fragment of paradise with its own distinct identity. But Italy's geographic drama doesn't end with mountains and seas. This is a land shaped by fire. Mount Vesuvius broods over Naples, a reminder that Italy sits on one of the most geologically active regions in Europe. Mount Etna in Sicily stands as Europe's most active volcano, perpetually smoking, occasionally erupting, always magnificent. Stromboli in the Aeolian Islands has been erupting continuously for over 2,000 years, a lighthouse of fire in the Mediterranean night. This is Italy's foundation. Mountains that touch the sky, seas that connect civilizations, volcanoes that remind us of the Earth's raw power. And from this diverse geography emerged something extraordinary, a culture as varied and rich as the landscape itself. In northern Italy, the Dolomites rise like cathedrals of stone. These limestone mountains, part of the Eastern Alps, possess a quality that defies easy description. Their peaks aren't simply tall, they're architectural. Spires and towers and vertical walls that glow pink and orange in the setting sun. A phenomenon the Italians call enrosadira, the turning to rose. Here, elevation shapes everything. Alpine meadows burst with wildflowers in summer. Forests of larch and pine climb slopes until the trees can climb no further. Above the tree line, only rock and ice and sky. This is a landscape of silence and scale. Of valleys so deep they hold their own weather. Of peaks so high they create their own clouds. But descend from these heights, and you'll find the Italian lakes Como. Garda, Maggiore, bodies of water, so beautiful they've attracted poets and painters for centuries. These lakes, carved by ancient glaciers, sit cradled between mountains like jewels in a setting. Lake Como's shores hold villages that seem to float between water and sky. Gardens cascade down hillsides. Villas that once housed nobility now watch over waters that reflect the surrounding peaks in perfect mirror symmetry. Lake Garda, Italy's largest lake, stretches nearly 30 miles from north to south. Its northern end, narrow and deep, feels alpine. Its southern shores, wider and gentler, feel Mediterranean. Palm trees and lemon groves thrive here, protected by mountains from northern cold. This is northern Italy, a place where nature operates on a grand scale, where mountains meet water in combinations that seem designed to inspire awe. Travel south, and the landscape transforms. The Amalfi Coast clings to cliffs above the Tyrrhenian Sea like a beautiful impossibility. Towns painted in pastels, coral, and cream and gold stack themselves on slopes so steep that streets become staircases and gardens become terraces. This is a coast of drama and color. Where the Mediterranean crashes against rocks hundreds of feet below clifftop villages, where lemon groves perfume the air. Capri rises from the sea, like a myth made real. This island, beloved by Roman emperors, remains a place of almost surreal beauty. The blue grotto glows with an otherworldly light sunlight filtering through underwater openings, turning the cave's water an impossible shade of blue. The Faraglione 3, massive rock formations jutting from the sea stand as monuments to the power of water and time. Waves that have crashed against these rocks for millions of years continue their patient work of sculpting stone. And then, Sicily, Italy's largest island, separated from the mainland by the narrow Strait of Messina. Sicily's landscapes carry the weight of countless invasions and influences. Greek, Roman, Arab, Norman, each civilization left its mark, not just in architecture and culture, but in the land itself. Mount Etna dominates eastern Sicily, its presence inescapable. At over 10,000 feet, it's not just Europe's most active volcano. It's a force that has shaped Sicilian life for millennia. Its eruptions have destroyed towns and created some of the most fertile soil in the Mediterranean. Its slopes hold vineyards and orchards that produce fruits with flavors intensified by volcanic minerals. Sicily's coasts range from rocky cliffs to sandy beaches, from hidden coves accessible only by boat to long stretches of shore where waves arrive in gentle rhythmic processions. This is Italy's landscape, a nation blessed, or perhaps burdened, with too much beauty. Mountains that challenge, seas that embrace, islands that enchant, and everywhere, evidence that humans have lived among this beauty for thousands of years, learning to shape the land, even as the land shaped them. Rome, the eternal city, a name that doesn't exaggerate. Stand in the Roman Forum, and you're standing where the ancient world made decisions that still echo today. The stones beneath your feet were worn smooth by senators and citizens, by soldiers and slaves, by the daily passage of an empire that ruled the known world. The Colosseum rises from the city like a ghost of glory. 80 entrances once funneled 50,000 spectators into this arena. Here, gladiators fought. Wild animals from distant provinces were displayed and destroyed. Naval battles were staged in a flooded arena. The game's brutal spectacular kept the masses entertained while emperors consolidated power. Today, the Colosseum stands as both monument and wound. Partially ruined by earthquakes and stone robbers, it nevertheless retains its power to stagger the imagination. This is what Rome built when Rome ruled the world. But Rome's influence wasn't limited to the capital. Across Italy, across Europe, across 3 continents, Rome left its mark. The Pantheon in Rome, built nearly 2,000 years ago, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. Step inside, and you enter a space of perfect proportions, lit only by the oculus, a circular opening at the dome's apex that frames the sky like a painting that's never the same twice. Travel south to Pompeii, and you'll find Rome frozen in time. When Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, it buried this prosperous city under volcanic ash and pumice. For 17 centuries, Pompeii lay hidden, perfectly preserved under layers of volcanic debris. Today, walking through Pompeii is walking through a day in 79 AD. The streets still show grooves worn by cart wheels. Houses still display frescoes painted 2 millennia ago. A bakery still holds loaves of bread, carbonized but recognizable. Bodies of residents captured in their final moments by ash that hardened around them tell silent stories of a catastrophe that came without warning. But Italy's greatness didn't end with Rome's fall. In fact, one could argue it was just beginning. Florence, the cradle of the Renaissance. In the 15th and 16th centuries, this single city set in motion a cultural revolution. Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli, Dante, Machiavelli. Names that need no context, no explanation. The Florence Cathedral Il Duomo dominates the city with Brunelleschi's dome, an engineering marvel of the Renaissance. Even today, architects study how Brunelleschi managed to construct this enormous dome without temporary wooden supports, a feat considered impossible at the time. The Uffizi Gallery holds collection of Renaissance art. And Pisa, known worldwide for one building that wasn't supposed to tilt. The Leaning Tower of Pisa began sinking during construction in the 12th century. The ground beneath soft clay and sand couldn't support the marble tower's weight. But instead of abandoning the project, medieval engineers adapted. They built successive floors with one side taller than the other, trying to compensate for the lean. The result? A mistake that became one of the world's most recognizable landmarks. The tower leans at about 4 degrees, held from further tilting by careful modern engineering. It stands as a reminder that sometimes human imperfection creates something more interesting than perfection ever could. Italy's monuments aren't just tourist attractions. They're evidence of human ambition spanning millennia. Evidence that this peninsula, this boot-shaped land, has been at the center of Western civilization since civilization began. The Roman Empire gave the world roads, aqueducts, concrete, law systems that still influence modern jurisprudence. The Renaissance gave the world a rebirth of classical learning, a flowering of art and science and philosophy that pulled Europe out of the medieval period and set the stage for the modern world. All of this from Italy, a country roughly the size of Arizona, a testament to what human creativity and ambition can achieve when given the right circumstances, the right landscape, the right moment in history. Rome is a city where the past refuses to stay buried. You might be walking to a coffee shop, and suddenly you're passing the Trevi Fountain, its baroque grandeur overwhelming a small piazza. Or you turn a corner, and there's the Pantheon, perfectly preserved, still functioning as a church after nearly 2,000 years. This is the paradox of Rome. History is everywhere, but life goes on. Italians meet friends at cafes, with ancient columns rising behind them. Children play soccer in plazas designed by Bernini. Restaurants serve dinner in buildings that were already old when America was discovered. Rome operates on multiple timelines simultaneously. The ancient city of emperors and gladiators, the medieval city of popes and pilgrims, the Renaissance city of art and architecture, the modern capital of contemporary Italy. And somehow, impossibly, it all works. The city functions. Millions live here. Buses and cars navigate streets that began as Roman roads. The metro system occasionally stops construction when workers unearth yet another archaeological site. This is Rome. Eternal because it never stops being relevant, never stops being lived in, never becomes just a museum. Florence presents a different character entirely. Smaller, more contained, Florence feels like a Renaissance painting you can walk through. The Arno River divides the city, spanned by bridges including the Ponte Vecchio, a medieval bridge with shops built along its edges, jewelers and goldsmiths working in the same location their predecessors have occupied for 6 centuries. Florence is a city of art, and Florentines know it. The city moves with quiet confidence. Yes, their city changed the world. Yes, their ancestors included the greatest artists humanity has produced. But Florentines don't boast. They simply live among this greatness as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Markets sell fresh produce in squares where revolutionary political meetings once occurred. Students sit on steps where Michelangelo once sat. The city honors its past, not through preservation alone, but through continuation by remaining a living city rather than becoming a monument to itself. Venice, though. Venice is something else entirely. A city built on wooden pilings driven into a lagoon. A city with canals instead of streets, boats instead of cars. A city that shouldn't exist, that defies logic and engineering and common sense, and yet has stood for over 1,000 years. Venice is sinking. Slowly, millimeter by millimeter, the city settles into the lagoon even as sea levels rise. High tides regularly flood St. Mark's Square. The Aqua Alta high water is both a regular inconvenience and an existential threat. But Venice persists. The Grand Canal still flows through the heart of the city, lined with palaces that speak of medieval wealth and power. Gondolas still carry tourists through narrow canals where buildings lean toward each other, like old friends sharing secrets. The Rialto Bridge still arches over the Grand Canal. Markets still sell fish and vegetables on its approaches. Venice is fragile beauty, impermanent beauty. Beauty made more precious by its vulnerability. And then there's Milan. Modern Italy's economic engine, Milan doesn't apologize for being contemporary. This is Italy's fashion capital, its financial center, its most forward-looking city. Glass towers rise alongside medieval churches. Fashion Week brings the world to Milan's runways. The stock exchange drives Italy's economy. But even Milan can't escape Italy's gravitational pull toward beauty and history. The Duomo Milan's cathedral took 6 centuries to complete. La Scala Opera House has premiered works by Verdi and Puccini, hosting performances that set standards for opera worldwide. Milan proves that Italy can be modern without abandoning its past. That innovation and tradition aren't opposing forces, they're two sides of the same coin, both essential to what makes Italy, Italy. Sardinia floats in the Mediterranean like a separate world. Italy's second-largest island sits roughly 120 miles west of the mainland, far enough to develop its own identity, its own language, its own sense of being simultaneously Italian and something else. The Costa Smeralda, the Emerald Coast, lives up to its name. Water so clear you can see the sandy bottom 30 feet down. Beaches of sand so white they almost hurt to look at under the Mediterranean sun. Rock formations, sculpted by wind and waves, forming smooth curves and dramatic angles. But Sardinia is more than beaches. The interior holds mountains and forests where traditions survive that vanished from mainland Italy centuries ago. Villages where Sardinian, a Romance language distinct from Italian, is still the primary tongue. Shepherds still tend flocks in highlands where wild mouflon sheep roam. Ancient stone structures called nuraghe dot the landscape mysterious stone towers built by the Nuragic civilization thousands of years ago. Over 7,000 of these structures survive, each one a reminder that Sardinia's history reaches back further than Rome, further than written records. Sicily, larger and closer to the mainland, has always been at the crossroads of Mediterranean civilizations. Greeks colonized Sicily in the 8th century BC, building cities like Syracuse that rivaled Athens in wealth and culture. The Valley of the Temples near Agrigento holds Greek temples in such good condition you might think they were built recently rather than 25 centuries ago. Romans came next, making Sicily Rome's first overseas province. Then Byzantines, then Arabs, who brought citrus trees and sophisticated irrigation, then Normans, then Spanish. Each civilization left marks. Arabic influences appear in Sicilian cuisine and architecture. Norman cathedrals blend Arabic geometric patterns with European designs, creating something unique to Sicily. The island's coasts reflect this diversity. The eastern coast, dominated by Mount Etna, features black sand beaches, volcanic remnants ground fine by waves. The southern coast holds long stretches of golden sand. The northern coast has rocky cliffs and hidden coves. And the smaller islands, each one a world condensed. The Aeolian Islands, volcanic archipelago north of Sicily. Stromboli erupts every few minutes, reliable as clockwork, sending glowing rocks arcing into the night sky. Lipari, the largest island, holds a historic center of whitewashed buildings climbing a hill crowned by a castle. Panaria attracts the yachting crowd, its tiny harbor filling with expensive boats each summer. And Cinque Terre, technically not islands, but 5 villages clinging to the Ligurian coast with the isolation of islands. Monterosso, Vernazza, Corniglia, Manarola, Riomaggiore. 5 villages, 5 different personalities, all sharing the same impossible location perched on cliffs above the sea, connected by footpaths carved into rock. These villages lived in isolation for centuries. No roads reached them. Everything arrived by boat, or by the steep paths connecting the villages to each other and to the highlands above. Today, Cinque Terre is famous, crowded with tourists who walk the coastal path, stopping in each village to experience their unique character. But early morning or late evening, when the day trippers have departed, the villages return to something like their old selves. Fishermen prepare boats. Locals sit in small plazas, talking and watching the sea. This is coastal Italy, where land and water create beauty through tension, where communities learned to live with the sea, to depend on it, to fear and love it in equal measure. Italian food isn't just sustenance, it's philosophy, it's family, it's identity. The principles are simple: fresh ingredients, minimal processing. Let the natural flavors speak. Pasta, of course, but not just pasta, hundreds of pasta shapes, each designed for specific sauces, specific preparations. Long pasta like spaghetti for oil-based sauces. Tube pasta like rigatoni for chunky sauces that can fill the tubes. Tiny pasta for soups. Large pasta for stuffing. Every region has its specialties. Emilia-Romagna gives us Parmigiano Reggiano cheese and balsamic vinegar from Modena. Naples gives us pizza, not the heavy, loaded version found elsewhere, but thin crust with simple toppings: tomatoes, mozzarella, basil. Tuscany is famous for bistecca alla Fiorentina, thick T-bone steak, grilled over hardwood, seasoned with nothing but salt and pepper and olive oil. Sicily gives us arancini, cannoli, caponata dishes showing Arabic influence in their use of ingredients like raisins and pine nuts alongside vegetables. Coffee, too, is ritual. Espresso, always espresso, drunk standing at a bar counter. Cappuccino is for breakfast. Only drinking it after lunch marks you as a tourist instantly. The afternoon might call for a macchiato espresso stained with a small amount of milk. But food is more than what's eaten. It's how it's eaten. Sunday pranzo. Sunday lunch remains sacred in many Italian families. Multiple generations gather. The meal lasts hours. Course after course, conversation flowing as freely. This isn't just eating, it's connection. It's passing down recipes and stories. It's reaffirming that family is the center, that relationships matter more than schedules. Markets remain central to Italian food culture. Every town has its market, usually weekly, sometimes daily in larger cities. Vendors sell vegetables and fruits, cheese and cured meats, fresh fish. This is where Italians buy food. Not just because it's fresh, which it is, but because it's social. You talk to the vendors. You discuss how to cook what you're buying. You see your neighbors. You participate in your community. What is it about Italy that stays with you? Maybe it's the light, the way morning sun turns Tuscan hillsides gold, the way evening light makes Roman marble glow warm and alive. Maybe it's the realization that beauty doesn't have to be rare, that it can be everywhere, so common that Italians almost take it for granted. A fountain in a small town might be a masterpiece anywhere else. Here, it's just the fountain. People fill water bottles from it without thinking about the sculpture, the craftsmanship, the centuries it stood there. Maybe it's the pace, the way Italians refuse to rush through life. Meals are experiences, not obligations. Conversation matters. Sitting in a plaza with friends, talking about nothing important, is time well spent. Or maybe it's simply the accumulation. Centuries of art and architecture and culture layered so thickly that you can't walk 10 feet without encountering something remarkable. A doorway, a fresco, a view. Constantly, endlessly, Italy presents beauty. This country, this boot-shaped peninsula extending into the Mediterranean, has shaped Western civilization for 3,000 years. Roman law, Renaissance art, architectural principles, scientific method, opera, fashion, cuisine. But Italy's influence isn't just historical, it's ongoing. Italian design still sets standards. Italian food culture spreads globally. Italian fashion houses still define elegance. Italian cars still represent performance and style. And the landscapes, those remain timeless. The Alps still tower. The Mediterranean still crashes against rocky coasts. Tuscan hills still roll toward horizons. Vesuvius still smokes. Etna still erupts. Italy changes and doesn't change. Cities modernize while preserving their hearts. Traditions adapt while retaining their essence. The country honors its past without being imprisoned by it. For visitors, Italy offers something rare, a place where time feels different, where you can stand in the Colosseum and feel Rome's power across centuries, where you can watch sunset from a Tuscan villa. Italy isn't just a destination. It's an experience that becomes memory, then something more than memory. It becomes a reference point, a standard, a reminder that humans can create beauty, that civilizations can achieve greatness, that the right combination of landscape and culture can produce something that endures. The echo of Italy. It sounds in your mind long after you've left. A bell tower in a Tuscan village, waves against Amalfi cliffs, the chaos of a Roman street, the silence of an Alpine dawn. These echoes remind us that the world is large and beautiful and worth exploring. That every country, every culture has its own story to tell. That we're all connected by this small planet we share. Italy has told its story, and that story continues in every meal shared, every artwork created, every moment when someone chooses beauty over convenience, connection over efficiency, life over mere existence. This is Italy, and its echo never truly fades.